Do you believe that some places remember, that stone and water can hold memories the way flesh holds scars? Before you answer, let me ask you something else. Have you ever looked at someone and known with absolute certainty that they're hiding something terrible? Not a small secret, not a white lie, but the kind of truth that, once spoken, changes everything. I knew that feeling the moment I met Marcus Holloway, and 6 weeks later, I watched him fall from the Widow's Point lighthouse, or at least, that's what I told the Coast Guard. But here's what I didn't tell them. Here's what I've never told anyone until now. Marcus didn't fall, and he wasn't alone up there. My name is Sarah Cunningham, and this is my confession. The story begins the way all the best horror stories do, with someone running from something. In my case, I was running from a failed marriage, a career that had imploded spectacularly, and a city that suddenly felt too small to contain my mistakes. The lighthouse keeper assistant position at Widow's Point appeared in my search results at 2 in the morning. Whiskey drunk and desperate, isolated location, minimal human contact, room and board included. I applied before sunrise and had the job by noon. That should have been my first warning. Positions that easy to get usually come with complications. I just didn't realize the complications would include a possible murder, a 30-year-old ghost ship, and the slow realization that I might be losing my mind. The ferry dropped me at Widow's Point on a September afternoon, when the sky hung low and heavy, the color of old bruises. The lighthouse rose from black rocks like a broken tooth, its paint peeling, its windows dark except for the lamp room at the top where the great lens turned and turned and turned, never stopping, never resting, a mechanical eye that saw everything and understood nothing. Marcus waited at the dock, his silhouette sharp against the gray water. He was older than I'd expected, maybe 60, with the kind of weathered face you see on old sailors, all angles and hollows and sun-damaged skin. But it was his eyes that stopped me. They were the palest blue I'd ever seen, almost colorless, and they didn't blink nearly as often as they should. Sarah Cunningham, his voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. That's me. He picked up my suitcase without asking, started toward the path that wound up the cliff face. I had to hurry to keep pace. I'm Marcus Holloway. I keep the light. You'll assist. There are 3 rules here, and they're not negotiable. I waited, but he didn't elaborate until we reached the top, both of us breathing hard, the wind trying to push us back toward the edge. 1. The lamp never goes dark. Whatever happens, whatever you see or hear, the lamp stays lit. 2. You don't go down to the rocks at low tide. Never. I don't care what you think you see down there. 3. He stopped, turned to face me fully, and I felt something cold slide down my spine. You don't ask about the Mary Catherine. Not ever. Understand? I didn't understand. I didn't understand anything, but I nodded anyway, because I needed this job, and because some instinct, older than reason, told me that Marcus Holloway was giving me a chance to leave with my ignorance intact. I should have taken it. I should have walked back down that cliff, waited for the ferry, and never looked back, but I didn't. And that's why I'm telling you this story now, before it's too late, before what happened to Marcus happens to someone else. Because here's the thing about Widow's Point. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The lighthouse isn't just a lighthouse, it's a prison. And Marcus wasn't the keeper, he was the prisoner. Let me take you back to my first night. The keeper's cottage sat beside the tower, a squat stone building that smelled of mildew and lamp oil. Marcus showed me to a room barely large enough for a bed and a dresser, its single window facing not the sea, but the lighthouse itself, so that every 15 seconds the beam swept past, turning everything bright as noon. before plunging back into darkness. Dinner at 6, Marcus said. Breakfast at dawn. Between, you're free to do what you want, long as you follow the rules. What about the lamp? When do I handle the lamp? Something in his voice made it clear the subject wasn't open for discussion. You'll do maintenance, painting, repairs, supplies. The mechanical work is mine. He left me alone then, his footsteps heavy on the stairs, and I heard the tower door clang shut. Through my window, I watched his shadow climb the spiral stairs inside, visible through the glass panels, rising higher and higher until he reached the lamp room and disappeared into the brightness. That's when I noticed the logbook. It sat on my dresser, though I was certain it hadn't been there moments before. Leather-bound, thick as a Bible, its cover worn smooth by generations of hands. I knew I should wait, should ask Marcus about it first, but curiosity is a hungry thing, and I'd always fed it too well. The first entries dated back to 1887, written in careful copperplate script: weather observations, ship sightings, maintenance notes, each keeper adding their voice to the chorus. A paper chain of lonely men watching over a lonely piece of ocean. But then I reached Marcus's entries, and everything changed. The first few years were normal enough, routine observations, professional, detached. Then, about 15 years back, the handwriting began to deteriorate. The words came harder, angrier, pressed so deep into the paper that some pages were torn. Heard it again last night, the knocking. Coming from below, from the foundation. I've checked every stone. There's nothing there, nothing that should make that sound. 3 months later, can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see her, the Mary Catherine, breaking apart on the rocks. I tell myself, it wasn't my fault. I tell myself, there was nothing I could have done. I'm lying. A year after that, the knocking is words now. I can almost understand them. They're angry. They want something. I think I know what. And then, most chilling of all, written just 2 weeks before I arrived, the handwriting barely legible, letters slanting drunkenly across the page. She's coming back, 30 years, and she's finally coming back. I saw her lights last night, moving beneath the water where no lights should be. The debt is due. God help me, the debt is due. I was still reading when the knocking started, not from below, as Marcus had described, from inside the walls of my room. 3 sharp raps, a pause, then 3 more, the pattern repeating, urgent, insistent, like something trying to communicate in the only language it had left. I pressed my ear to the wall, my heart hammering. The knocking came again, and this time I felt it vibrate through the stone, felt it travel up through my bones. And beneath the knocking, so faint I might have imagined it, I heard something else. Water, the sound of water rushing through spaces it shouldn't reach. I threw open my door, ran down the narrow hall to the cottage's main room. Empty. The kitchen, the bathroom, the supply closet, all empty. But the knocking followed me, moving through the walls, always just out of sight, always 3 beats at a time, like a heart struggling to keep rhythm. Then it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. It was the silence of something holding its breath, something waiting to see what I would do next. I did what any rational person would do. I grabbed my jacket and ran for the lighthouse. The tower door was unlocked, swinging open at my touch. The spiral stairs climbed into darkness above me, the only light coming from the lamp room. 70 feet up, I could hear the clockwork mechanism ticking, the great lens rotating on its mercury bath, and beneath that, Marcus's footsteps pacing back and forth, an endless circuit. Marcus, my voice echoed in the shaft, swallowed by stone. Marcus, I need to talk to you. The pacing stopped. For a moment, nothing moved. Then his face appeared at the railing above, pale and drawn in the lamp's glow. Go back to the cottage. There's something knocking in the walls. I heard. I said go back, but I was already climbing. taking the stairs two at a time, and I saw his expression change from annoyance to something darker, something that might have been fear. "Sarah, stop. You don't understand what you're—" I reached the lamp room and stopped, my breath catching in my throat. The walls were covered in tally marks, thousands of them, carved deep into the plaster, some fresh, some decades old. They covered every surface, a manic scrawl of lines, grouped in fives, the desperate counting of someone trying to track something that couldn't be forgotten. And on the floor, arranged in a perfect circle around the lamp's base, were flowers, dead flowers, withered and salt-crusted, but carefully placed, precisely spaced, an offering. Or a ward. Marcus stood at the window, his back to me, his shoulders rigid. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. 30 years ago today, the Mary Catherine went down on the rocks, 6 souls aboard, all lost, and it was my fault. Marcus, I was supposed to light the secondary beacon, the one on the rocks. The storm was bad, and I knew she'd need it to navigate the shoals. But I was tired, God, I was so tired. I'd been up for 36 hours, and I told myself I'd rest for just a minute, just close my eyes for a moment. His hands were shaking now, clenched white-knuckled on the railing. When I woke, she was already on the reef. I heard the screams, heard the hull tearing open, heard 6 people dying, and I did nothing. I just stood here and watched. You fell asleep. That's not murder, it gets worse. He turned to face me, and I saw tears tracking down his weathered cheeks. One of them made it to shore, a woman. She was alive when she reached the rocks, and I could have saved her. I had the boat, I had the equipment, but I didn't go down. I was afraid, you see, afraid of what she'd say, afraid of what I'd have to admit. So I watched her from up here, watched her cling to the rocks as the tide came back in, watched her slip, watched her drown within sight of safety. The lamp beam swept around, and in its light I saw his face clearly. This was a man who'd been dying for 30 years, paying for his cowardice in an endless currency of guilt. I've kept the light burning ever since, perfect, never dark, never late, as if I could make up for that one night, as if I could balance the scales. He laughed, a broken sound. But you can't balance those scales, Sarah. Some debts don't forgive, and every year on this night, she comes back to remind me, Marcus, there's no such thing as. The knocking came again, but this time, it wasn't in the cottage, it was here, in the lighthouse, rising from below, climbing the stairs with measured, methodical strikes. Knock, 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 a pause, then again. Climbing higher. Marcus's face went white. She's early. God, she's never been early before. Who's early? Marcus, what are you? The woman from the Mary Catherine. Her name was Catherine Marsh. She was 24 years old. She had a daughter waiting in Portland, and every year since she died on this night, she comes back. The knocking reached our level. So loud now, it shook the floor beneath our feet. The lamp flickered. Marcus lunged for the clockwork mechanism, adjusting gears with desperate fingers. The lamp can't go out. Whatever happens, the lamp stays lit. Promise me, Sarah, promise me, you'll keep the light burning. I wanted to tell him he was insane, that grief and isolation had broken something in his mind. But then I saw it. Water seeping under the door. Salt water, dark and thick, spreading across the floor in tendrils like reaching fingers. And in that water, something was taking shape. A woman's silhouette, formed from shadow and sea foam. She had no face I could discern, but I felt her attention fix on Marcus like a lighthouse beam of her own, cold and inexorable. Marcus sank to his knees. Catherine. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know it's not enough. I know nothing I can say will ever be enough. But please, She moved forward, and where her form touched the tally marks on the walls, they began to bleed, not blood, but salt water, tears, pouring from the carved lines as though the stone itself was weeping. "I've kept the light," Marcus whispered. 30 years. I've kept it perfect. I've tried to atone. Doesn't that count for something?" The woman stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she raised one translucent arm and pointed, not at Marcus, at me. My blood turned to ice. "What? No, I didn't do anything. I wasn't even." But she kept pointing, her finger aimed at my chest like an accusation. And then, I heard it, her voice, if you could call it that, not words so much as the sound of drowning given form. The gurgle and rush of water filling lungs that no longer needed air. "Replace." Marcus's head snapped up. "No, no, she's innocent. She has nothing to do with this. Take me. The debt is mine." "Replace." The word came again. And this time the water on the floor surged forward, wrapping around my ankles like liquid chains. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about revenge. Catherine Marsh hadn't been coming back all these years to torment Marcus. She'd been coming back to keep the light, to make sure that no one else would die the way she had, that no other ship would be lost because a keeper fell asleep or looked away. She'd been the true keeper of Widow's Point for 30 years. Marcus was just the body, keeping the lamp room warm. And now, after 3 decades of faithful service, she wanted to be relieved of duty. She wanted someone to take her place, to carry the burden, to stand eternal watch. She wanted me. "No." Marcus was on his feet now, moving between us. "You can't have her. The debt is mine, and I'll pay it. Just not like this." "Marcus, don't." But he was already moving, and I realized too late what he intended to do. He ran for the railing, and for a moment, I thought he was going to climb over, to throw himself from the tower. But instead, he reached into his shirt and pulled out something I hadn't noticed before. A locket, salt-tarnished silver, hanging from a chain around his neck. "I have your daughter's address," he said to the specter. "Catherine's daughter. She'll be 54 now, living in Boston. I tracked her down years ago. Thought maybe I could make amends somehow, but I was too much of a coward." He opened the locket, showed the water woman a faded photograph. "But I can tell her what happened. I can tell her about you, about how brave you were, clinging to those rocks, about how you deserved better." The water stopped advancing. The woman's form wavered, losing cohesion. "I'll go down there," Marcus continued, his voice breaking, "to the rocks, to where you died, and I'll stay there until the tide comes in. I'll finally pay the debt I owe. But please, let her go. Let Sarah go. She's innocent." I wanted to stop him, wanted to tell him there had to be another way. But the words died in my throat, because I could see in his eyes that he was already gone. Already at peace in a way he hadn't been for 30 years. The water woman considered. Then slowly she nodded. Marcus smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look young again. He turned to me. "The lamp, Sarah. Promise me." "I promise," I whispered. He walked to the door, and the water parted for him like a curtain. I started to follow, but Catherine's form moved between us, blocking my path. When I looked again, Marcus was already descending, his footsteps echoing in the shaft. I ran to the window and watched him cross the rocks, sure-footed even in darkness, climbing down to that terrible place where 30 years ago he'd watched a woman drown. He sat on the highest boulder, the one that would be covered last, and looked up at the lighthouse. Even from that distance, I could see him mouth 2 words, "Thank you." Then he closed his eyes and waited. The tide came in quickly that night, faster than seemed natural. I watched until I couldn't bear to watch anymore, until the waves closed over his head and he disappeared beneath the black water. The whole time, Catherine's form stood beside me, silent, watching with whatever passed for eyes in her drowned face. When it was over, when the sea had claimed what it was owed, she turned to me one final time, "Keep the light," and then she was gone, evaporating into mist, leaving only the salt water stains on the floor, as proof she'd ever been there. I kept my promise when the Coast Guard came at dawn, alerted by the ferry captain who'd noticed the keeper's boat still tied at the dock. I told them I'd found Marcus dead on the rocks. A fall, I said, an accident. The tide had been coming in, and I couldn't reach him in time. They believed me because they wanted to believe me, because the alternative was too complicated, too strange. They filed their reports, held their inquiry, and ruled a death by misadventure. Another tragedy at Widow's Point. Another keeper, lost to the sea's indifference. They asked if I wanted to stay on. The position was vacant. They said it would be a shame for the lighthouse to go dark. I said yes. That was 6 months ago. I've kept the lamp burning every night since. Never late, never dark. I've painted the railings and repaired the roof and ordered supplies from the mainland. I've done everything a proper keeper should do. And every night, when the wind is right, I hear the knocking, 3 beats at a time, coming from below. Sometimes I think it's Catherine, checking to make sure I haven't fallen asleep, haven't looked away. Sometimes I think it's Marcus, trying to tell me something from wherever he is now. But mostly, I think it's just the lighthouse itself, settling into its stones, counting off the years, the way Marcus counted with his tally marks. I've started making my own marks on the wall, not as many as Marcus, not yet, but give me time, because here's what I've learned about Widow's Point, about lighthouses in general, about the price of keeping people safe. Every light needs a keeper, and every keeper pays a price. Some pay with their sanity, driven mad by isolation and the endless turning of the lens. Some pay with their relationships, watching marriages and friendships dissolve in the salt air and distance. And some, like Marcus, pay with their lives. I don't know yet what my price will be, but I can feel it accumulating. A weight settling on my shoulders, a little heavier each day. I see things in the water sometimes, shapes that shouldn't be there. I hear voices in the wind, speaking words I almost understand. And lately, when I look in the mirror, I've noticed my eyes are getting paler, almost colorless, like Marcus's eyes were, like the eyes of someone who's looked too long at things they shouldn't have seen. But I keep the lamp burning. That's what matters. Every night without fail, the light sweeps across the water, warning ships away from the rocks, guiding them safely past the shoals. No one has died at Widow's Point since Marcus did. No ships have foundered. No lives have been lost. The debt is being paid. And if someday another assistant arrives, scared and running from something, and I have to explain the rules, have to warn them about the knocking and the water woman and the terrible price of looking away, well, that's just the job. That's what keepers do. We keep the light, no matter what it costs. So let me ask you again, now that you know the truth, do you believe? Some places remember. Do you believe that water and stone can hold the weight of our failures, can echo with the voices of those we've wronged? I didn't believe it either, once, but I do now. I believe it every night when I climb those spiral stairs. I believe it when I wind the clockwork and polish the lens. I believe it when I stand at the window and watch the sea, always watching, always waiting for the next storm, the next ship, the next person who might need saving. And I believe it most of all when the knocking comes, rising from below like a heartbeat, like a question, like a reminder, 3 beats at a time, always 3 beats at a time, the same rhythm as a drowning woman's fist, pounding on rocks as the tide comes in, asking why nobody came, asking why nobody answered, asking why the light wasn't bright enough to save her. I can't answer those questions, but I can keep the lamp burning. I can stand watch through the endless nights. I can carry the weight that Marcus carried, the weight that Catherine carries still, because that's the job, that's the price, and someone has to pay it. The lamp room window behind me shows my reflection, pale and ghostly in the glass. Beyond it, the beam sweeps across the water, cutting through darkness like a knife through silk. 15 seconds of light, 15 of shadow, light, shadow, forever. And in the darkness between the sweeps, just for a moment, I see her, Catherine Marsh, standing at the edge of the rocks where she died, her form made of seafoam and starlight. She's not angry anymore. She's not even sad. She's just watching, making sure I don't fall asleep, making sure I don't look away, making sure the light stays burning, always burning, because if it ever goes dark, even for a moment, she'll know, they'll all know, and then I'll learn what Marcus learned, what every keeper who breaks their promise learns. Some debts never forgive, some lights must never die, and some promises, once made, bind you forever to the rocks and the water, and the turning of the lens. So I keep my promise, I keep the light, and I wait for the day when someone else arrives, running from something, looking for quiet, looking for peace, and I'll tell them the rules, and I'll hope they're smarter than I was, smarter than Marcus was, smart enough to run while they still can, because here's the final truth, the one that haunts me more than any ghost. Marcus didn't fall from the lighthouse that morning. He went to the rocks willingly. He paid his debt. He found his peace. But I'm still here, still climbing the stairs, still tending the lamp, still hearing the knocking in the walls. And every day, I feel a little more like him, a little more hollowed out, a little more turned to driftwood by the wind and the waiting. One day, someone will find me on those rocks, or maybe in the lamp room, my eyes staring at nothing, my fingers still reaching for the mechanism, and they'll call it an accident, they'll call it tragedy, they'll call it anything except what it really is: payment, debt, the price we pay for the light. But until then, I keep watch, I keep the lamp burning, and when the knocking comes, I answer with the only words I have left: I'm here, I'm watching, I won't fall asleep, I promise, I promise, I promise. 3 beats at a time, just like a heart, just like a fist on stone, just like the rhythm of waves on rocks, where someone died asking why nobody came. Keep the light burning, that's all that matters. Keep the light burning, forever. But let me tell you what happened 3 nights ago. Let me tell you why I'm recording this now. Why I'm leaving this account where someone will find it. Because the pattern is changing. The rules are shifting, and I think my time is running out faster than I anticipated. It started with the logbook. I've been making my entries every day, just as Marcus did, just as every keeper before him did. Weather observations, maintenance notes, the mundane cataloging of lighthouse life. But 3 nights ago, when I opened the book to make my evening entry, I found something new. A page I'd never seen before, inserted between my last entry and the blank pages that followed. The paper was different, older, water-stained and brittle, and the handwriting was feminine, elegant despite being rushed, the letters slanting desperately across the page. It was Catherine's handwriting. To whoever keeps the light after Marcus, I need you to know the truth, the whole truth. Not just the story he told himself for 30 years, because Marcus was a good man who made a terrible mistake. But I am not the only one waiting in the water, and my debt is not the only death that binds this place. My hands shook as I read on. The Mary Catherine went down with 6 souls, yes, but we were not lost to accident or storm, or one keeper's moment of weakness. We were lured, deliberately, methodically, by someone who knew these waters, who knew the schedules of ships, who knew exactly when the secondary beacon would be dark. The words blurred as my vision swam. This couldn't be right. Marcus had confessed to falling asleep, to negligence, to cowardice. But Catherine was suggesting something darker. There was another keeper at Widow's Point 30 years ago. Before Marcus, his name was Thomas Weatherby, and he'd held the position for 15 years. He was the one scheduled for duty that night. He was the one who should have lit the secondary beacon, but he never showed up for his shift. Marcus arrived early, found the lighthouse empty, and took over. He thought Thomas had simply abandoned his post. He never knew the truth. I turned the page, though part of me wanted to stop reading, wanted to close the book and pretend I'd never seen these words. Thomas Weatherby was a wrecker. Do you know what that means? In the old days, men would lure ships to their doom deliberately, then salvage the cargo from the wreckage. It's an old crime, an old sin. We thought those days were past, but Thomas had gambling debts, creditors in Portland who were growing impatient. The Mary Catherine was carrying $80,000 in cash, payment for a fishing fleet sale. Thomas knew about it. He had friends in the harbor master's office who told him these things. So he waited. He let the storm build. He made sure the secondary beacon stayed dark, and he waited on the rocks with a boat, ready to salvage what he could before anyone noticed. What he didn't count on was me making it to shore alive. What he didn't count on was Marcus showing up early for his shift and seeing everything from the lamp room window. The next part was written in larger letters, pressed so hard into the paper that it had torn in places. Thomas killed me, not the sea, not the rocks. Thomas Weatherby climbed down to where I clung to the stones, and he pushed my head under the water. He held me there until I stopped struggling. Marcus saw it happen. That's what broke him. Not that he failed to save me, but that he watched my murder and did nothing. He was afraid Thomas would kill him too, afraid to be a witness. So he stayed silent, let Thomas go free, told everyone I'd drowned in the wreck, and Thomas disappeared that same night, took whatever he'd salvaged from the Mary Catherine, and vanished. As far as I know, he's still out there somewhere, living on blood money. I had to stop reading, had to stand up and pace the small room, my mind reeling. Marcus hadn't just been guilty of negligence. He'd been guilty of witnessing murder and staying silent. That was the real debt. That was the weight that had hollowed him out. But Catherine's entry wasn't finished. I've watched over this lighthouse for 30 years, making sure no other ship meets the fate mine did, making sure the light never fails. But I'm tired, so tired, and there are others in the water with me now. Others who've died in these waters over the decades, over the centuries. They're angry. Angrier than I am. They don't want justice anymore. They want revenge, and they're not content to knock on walls and appear in lamp rooms. They want the lighthouse dark. They want more ships, more souls, to join them in the deep. I've been holding them back, but I don't know how much longer I can. The keeper who comes after Marcus needs to be stronger than he was, needs to be willing to do what he wouldn't, because Thomas Weatherby is still alive. I've seen him in my dreams, in the visions the sea gives me. He's old now, sick, dying, and he's coming back. He's coming back to Widow's Point. The entry ended there, the handwriting trailing off, as though Catherine had been pulled away mid-sentence. I stared at the page until the words stopped making sense, until they became just shapes and lines. Thomas Weatherby, a murderer, a wrecker, still alive after 30 years, coming back. I wanted to believe it was impossible, that dead women don't write in logbooks, that ghosts don't leave warnings, but I'd seen too much, heard too much, the knocking in the walls, the water seeping under doors, the woman made of seafoam and shadow. I couldn't deny any of it anymore, so I did what any rational person would do. I started researching. The lighthouse keeper records were stored in the cottage basement. Boxes of old files and photographs dating back to the 1800s. I found Thomas Weatherby's employment record easily enough. Hired in 1979, dismissed in 1994, under mysterious circumstances. No forwarding address, no references, just a notation in the margin. Left position without notice, suspected theft of Lighthouse supplies. But there was a photograph clipped to the file. A man in his 40s, lean and hard-faced, standing beside the lighthouse with his arms crossed. His eyes were dark, calculating, the eyes of someone who saw the world as something to be exploited, to be used. I took the photograph upstairs and pinned it to the wall of the lamp room, next to the window where I kept watch. I wanted to remember that face, needed to recognize it if I saw it again. That night, the knocking came back, but it was different this time. Not the measured 3 beats I'd grown accustomed to. This was frantic, chaotic. Dozens of fists pounding on stone from every direction. The cottage shook with it. The lamp room trembled, and beneath the knocking, I heard voices, not words, just sounds. The gurgling moans of drowned things, the wet gasps of water-filled lungs, the scraping of fingernails on rock. They were rising. The others, Catherine had mentioned, the angry dead who wanted the light to fail. I ran to the mechanism, checked the oil, confirmed the clockwork was wound tight. The lamp kept turning, its beam cutting through the darkness outside. But the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to be growing, spreading, reaching. That's when I saw the boat, a small fishing vessel, old and barnacle encrusted, the peering out of the fog like something from a nightmare. It had no running lights, no identification markers, just a single figure at the helm, silhouetted against the faint glow of dawn. The boat headed straight for the rocks. I grabbed the radio, started to call out a warning, but my hand froze on the transmit button because I recognized the silhouette now, recognized the lean, hard angles of the body, the way the figure stood with arms crossed, confident and calculating. Thomas Weatherby had come home. He beached the boat where the Mary Catherine had gone down 30 years ago, climbed out onto the rocks without hesitation. He knew every stone, every tidal pool. He'd probably walked this path 1,000 times, salvaging cargo from ships he'd deliberately destroyed. I should have called the Coast Guard, should have locked the lighthouse door and waited for help. But something in me, something that had been building since the night Marcus died, refused to hide anymore. I descended the spiral stairs, crossed the distance to the rocks, and met Thomas Weatherby face to face for the first time. He was old now, as Catherine had said, 70 at least, his face creased and weathered, his body bent with age and sickness, but his eyes were the same, dark, calculating, unrepentant. "You're the new keeper," he said, not a question. "I am." "Then you know what happened here. Marcus told you before he died, didn't he? About the Mary Catherine, about how he failed." "He told me some of it. Catherine told me the rest." Thomas's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition. Catherine's dead, been dead 30 years. The dead don't always stay quiet, especially when they have unfinished business. He smiled then, a thin, cruel expression. "I came back for what's mine. There's still cargo down there, sealed containers that survived the wreck, 80,000 in cash, waterproofed and waiting. I've thought about it every day for 30 years. Now I'm dying, and I want what I earned." Earned. The word came out sharp as broken glass. "You murdered 6 people. You drowned a woman with your bare hands. You earned nothing but damnation." "I earned survival," he spat. "I earned freedom from the debts that would have killed me anyway. And some lighthouse keeper's conscience isn't going to stop me from taking what's mine." He started past me, heading for the water's edge where the tide was low, where the wreckage of the Mary Catherine still lay scattered among the rocks. I should have let him go, should have let the sea take him, let him dive down into the cold water and never surface. But I thought of Marcus, of how he'd spent 30 years trying to atone for staying silent, of how he'd finally paid his debt with his life, hoping it would be enough, and I thought of Catherine, holding back the angry dead for 3 decades, keeping the light burning through sheer force of will. They'd both paid their debts, both sacrificed for their failures. It was time for Thomas Weatherby to pay his. The water won't give you what you want, I called after him. It'll only take what you owe. He laughed, already knee-deep in the surf. Superstitious nonsense. There's nothing in this water but fish and old wood. I watched as he dove under, disappearing beneath the surface, waited as the seconds stretched into minutes. The water where he'd submerged began to churn, to foam white like something was thrashing below. Then the screaming started, not from Thomas, from the water itself. The voices I'd heard in the knocking, the drowned dead, all rising at once in a chorus of rage and vindication. The water around where Thomas had dove turned black, thick as oil, and shapes moved within it. Hands, faces, the ghosts of everyone who died in these waters, not just from the Mary Catherine, but from centuries of wrecks and storms and tragedies. They'd been waiting for him. They'd been waiting for 30 years, and now they had him. The water went still. Thomas Weatherby never surfaced. The tide came in and erased all evidence that he'd ever been there, smoothing the sand, filling his footprints, washing away his boat until it sank beneath the waves like it had always belonged there. I climbed back to the lighthouse as dawn broke across the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. When I reached the lamp room, I found the flowers were fresh, not dead and salt-crusted, but alive, blooming impossibly in the salt air. And Catherine stood at the window one last time, her form more solid than I'd ever seen it, almost human. "Thank you," she said, and her voice was clear now, no longer the sound of drowning, but the sound of relief. "The debt is paid. All debts." Thomas answered for his crimes. Marcus answered for his silence. "And I can finally rest." "What about me?" I asked. "What's my debt?" She smiled, and it was sad and kind and knowing. "You have no debt, Sarah. You never did. You're not here as punishment. You're here as witness, to make sure the story doesn't get forgotten, to make sure people remember that actions have consequences, that silence has a price, that the sea never forgets." "How long do I keep the light?" "As long as you choose. The angry dead are gone now, pulled down with Thomas to whatever waits below. There's nothing left to hold you here but your own will." And then she faded, dissolving into the morning light, like fog before the sun. The flowers on the floor turned to salt and scattered in a breeze that came from nowhere. I was alone in the lamp room, truly alone for the first time since I'd arrived. The lamp kept turning behind me, faithful and eternal, and I realized something. I could leave. I could call the Coast Guard, resign my position, walk back down to the dock, and never return. But I won't, because Catherine was right. Someone needs to be the witness. Someone needs to keep the story alive, to maintain the light, to make sure that future ships find their way safely past the rocks where so many died. Not out of debt, not out of guilt, but out of choice. That's the difference between me and Marcus, between me and Thomas. I'm here because I choose to be, and that makes all the difference.